History could be made Sunday as Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs seek the first Super Bowl three-peat in NFL history. Mahomes is just 29, but are they already one of the great dynasties in sports history? Well, Jeff Benedict actually wrote the book, Dynasty, based on the New England Patriots' recent reign atop the sports world. The book is also an incredible Apple TV series streaming. The 17-time best-selling author and Emmy-winning producer joins us now. Jeff, great to have you on the show. Really appreciate the time. With the caveat that you were given unprecedented access to the Patriots, on the surface, how similar are these two dynasties, if you will, the Chiefs and Patriots?
Well, I think probably the origin of the two is pretty similar. The Patriots won their first three Super Bowls in a 4-year span. They did it really early in the partnership between Belichick, Brady, and Kraft. That's similar to Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Hunt family. You know, they've come out of the gate. They've won a few Super Bowls rapidly. They're on the cusp of potentially winning their third in a row. But I think where they differ, and this is a huge difference, is after the Patriots won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, very similar to the Chiefs, they went a decade without winning another Super Bowl. And what separates this Patriots dynasty from all its predecessors, the 49ers in the 80s with Montana and Walsh and DeBartolo, the Steelers in the 70s, or the Packers in the 60s, was that all of those dynasties ended after they had their run of Super Bowls. The Patriots stayed together for 10 more years, the same nucleus, and then came back and won 3 more Super Bowls. And I think that's really what separates them the most from the Chiefs.
Yeah, as Julian Edelman told me last week, when you look at Tom Brady's career, he actually had 3 separate Hall of Fame careers, which is really impossible to even process that. So what could keep this Chiefs dynasty together? What could break them up?
I think just it's sort of the laws of nature are what are going to probably break them up. It was unprecedented until Brady, Belichick, Kraft, that the owner, the coach, and the quarterback stayed together for 20 years, literally 2 decades. It would be really difficult, I think, for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to be together for 20 years. I mean, it's hard for anybody to do that. That's why it had never been done before. And I think it's really unlikely the Chiefs can keep that nucleus together for that long. I mean, does Andy Reid coach for 10 more years? Not likely. So the real question is, how many Super Bowls can they win while they're together?
Yeah, Andy Reid is 66 years old. Let's talk about the main characters in the two. At least the leading men appear very different. Mahomes, a generational physical talent, arguably unlike we've ever seen in football. Would you say that of Tom Brady, though?
I think here's where Tom Brady and LeBron James are very similar in the sense that their conditioning and their commitment to their bodies is unmatched. And I mean, there was no one in the NFL who trained and was as disciplined as Tom was with his body for 20. That's what allowed him to play for well over 20 years, going on to Tampa and continuing to play at the top level. That's hard to find, just like in basketball. Same thing with LeBron, doing it at age 40 and still being at the peak. And I think, so that's look, no one questions Patrick's talent. Obviously, he is a generational talent. But to survive at the top for that long in this game is hard to do anyways, because it's such a physical game. Those are questions yet to be answered.
Yeah, you can't help but wonder as well, with Mahomes making exponentially more money than Tom Brady ever did, can you keep that drive for 20 years the way Brady did? It'll be interesting to find out. Now, there's the mastermind, Bill Belichick, of course, the curmudgeonly genius. Andy Reid, really the antithesis of that. Is he underrated because of his demeanor?
I don't know that Andy Reid's underrated. I don't think he is. I mean, everyone in the business, any coach that's on the opposite side of the field during a game knows what they're up against with Andy Reid. The thing that's different about Andy and Bill is really a lot of it has to do with demeanor and style and how he interacts with his players and his coaches. I mean, Andy Reid he's beloved throughout the league. There isn't a team with a vacancy that wouldn't want to hire him if he ever left the Chiefs, which I doubt he ever will. But I mean, I think that that's a big part of who Andy is. I mean, he's loved in Philly, even though he's not in Philly anymore. And he'll always be beloved in Philly. He's really been kind of beloved anywhere he's gone. Bill basically hunkered down in New England. He stayed there for, over 2 decades and then left. And I just think that there's a lot of differences between their personalities and how they carry themselves.
No doubt about that. And to remind folks, Andy Reid is the winningest head coach in Eagles history and Chiefs history, which is rather remarkable. Yes. I can't help but ask how you think Bill Belichick will translate to college football, knowing what you know about his personality and his style.
He's in a world that's so different than the world he's lived in for his entire life. I mean, and especially because college football is so different today than it was even a few years ago. It's a new universe where players can come and go. Players can get paid. They can make money. There's all kinds of incentives to leave. And he's in North Carolina. It's Tobacco Road. That's basketball country. He's not at Ohio State or Michigan or one of these premier programs. So it's an enormous challenge to take on at that stage of your life. But a lot of people will be watching to see how that all plays out for him.
Yeah, it's interesting how he'll handle the essentially free agency every single year. That is unlike anything really in sports, certainly not like the NFL, because you got to recruit your own team every year.
Yes.
So what people will find out in your book is there was an obvious tension between Belichick and Brady. Do you see that same dynamic with Mahomes and Reid, though?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But there's a big but. And I think that you got to remember that the tension between Bill and Tom wasn't present after they'd won 3 Super Bowls. They were together 20 years. It's a marriage. It's very, very long. And I think, Patrick and Andy, obviously their personalities are different. There's a lot of things different about them than Bill and Tom. But also, if you just look at the point in time they're at, that tension hadn't entered the Brady-Belichick relationship yet at that stage. Look, if Andy and Patrick played together for 20 years, I mean, who knows? But I just think that, Bill and Tom, the reason they won so much was because they were so intense. They were probably more committed to winning than anyone else in their respective jobs at that time. And when you put 2 people like that together and then, kind of make them stay together for 20 years. And that was really Robert's role in the back half of the Patriots dynasty. I mean, the first 10 years, Bill and Tom operated very differently than they did in the second 10 years. And the role of the owner is much more impactful and critical in those second 10 years. I think the owner actually has a much bigger role in the fact that those further Super Bowl titles came to New England, because probably to their own devices, Bill and Tom wouldn't have stayed together that long.
And that was my big lesson and most from that. I covered the Patriots for 5 seasons, and frankly, I did not realize the role that Bob Kraft played there. What did he do? How would you characterize that for people that haven't yet read the book? What did he do to keep Belichick and Brady together?
Well, I describe him like a bridge. He became the bridge between Bill and Tom. I mean, there was a long period of years where, Bill and Tom didn't really spend time together away from the field or away from the facility. Robert spent a lot of time with both men. He spent a lot of time with Bill. He spent a lot of time with Tom. Now, Bill, it was mostly business. Tom, it was both business and a lot of personal. And he understood both men very, very well. And he was able to meet the needs that Bill had to keep Bill there and meet the needs of Tom to keep Tom there. And especially toward the end, and I'm talking about when we get to the point where the Eagles beat the Patriots in early 2018 in that Super Bowl, when it looked like everything was blowing apart. That year in particular, Robert really invested himself in keeping Bill and Tom together. There were lots of conversations, lots of meetings, and finding out, just how to broker the needs of both men to keep them as together for as long as possible. I liken it to like having, John Lennon and Paul McCartney on your payroll. They're the two biggest stars in the music industry, and they're on the same stage. And it's hard to keep them there because when you have a star that big, the light needs to usually be on the star, not two stars. And the Patriots had the two biggest stars in the NFL on their payroll. They had the coach and they had the quarterback, both of whom are looked at as kind of the greatest of all time. It's not easy keeping those two people on the payroll for that long. What the owner does behind the scenes, it's the opposite of Jerry Jones. It's all behind the scenes. It's not in front of the microphone. That's what made this work.
Is that where Jerry Jones goes wrong?
Well, it's a totally different style of leadership. And I think you just have to look at the records. They both came into the NFL at almost the same time. Jerry came in first, obviously, at the end of the 80s, and he won those Super Bowls in the early 90s. And then Robert comes in and buys the Patriots. And since Robert has come in, Dallas has never won a Super Bowl. They haven't even, they haven't even been back. And I think that the management leadership style of the two men, to me, is fascinating because it's so different. And the results have been very different.
Yeah, the Cowboys haven't been back to an NFC championship game in 30 years. I can't help but ask, if the Beatles had a Bob Kraft, how would music history be altered? Some might not even remember that they were only together 10 years.
Less than 10. Less than 10. Yeah, I mean, one time I interviewed him in his apartment in New York, and he has an apartment in the building that the Beatles stayed in when they first came to America to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. And he had a couple of autographed pictures by the Beatles hanging up in there. And it just got me thinking, and I actually kind of half jokingly said to him that if they had had somebody like that in the late 60s, as we went into 1970, who could have worked with both artists, who knows, right? And it's a shame that that didn't happen.
It really is. I mentioned you wrote about some other bestsellers and some of the most impactful, arguably the three most impactful athletes of our generation, LeBron James and Tiger Woods. You mentioned a common thread in how LeBron and Brady take care of their bodies, but in terms of those three, Brady, Tiger, LeBron, is there a common thread in true greatness? Is in their preparation? Is it in their mind?
Yeah, a lot of it's mental. Look, anybody who makes it into the NFL or the NBA is a phenomenal athlete. Phenomenal athlete. Like the guys on the end of the bench are phenomenal athletes. So usually what separates this pool of great athletes is much more mental. And it has so much more to do with the discipline of the mind. And I think that Tom and Tiger and LeBron are incredibly disciplined human beings. And they also have a fire. Like, they don't need to be stoked. It's really hard when you get to the top of any profession and you conquer it. I don't care what the business is. When you conquer it, it's really hard to maintain the kind of motivation that it took you to get to the top. That hunger, that drive, that fierce competitiveness. Once you're at the top and you're literally the best in the world at whatever you do, maintaining that kind of drive over years is incredibly difficult. When you look at Tiger and LeBron and Tom Brady, you're looking at three people who happen to be athletes, who possess the kind of drive you can't coach, that makes them want to get up at the end of every season or tournament or game and do it again, despite the fact that they're aging and they're competing against people every year that are younger and younger and younger than they are. That takes something different. That's not about athleticism. That's about something going on in here.
Brady won his fourth Super Bowl at 37. Mahomes would be 29 if he wins on Sunday. What is the one element that will determine his greatness ultimately, his staying power?
Well, football is a dangerous game. It's a very physical game. Let's keep in mind, Tom Brady wins 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, then has an undefeated 16-0 season, and loses to the Giants because of the helmet catch. Remember what happened the next game that Tom played in is the season opener after losing to the Giants. first game, ironically, against the Chiefs, he gets hit low and blows his knee out and doesn't play for the rest of the season. He missed the whole 2008 season. And honestly, if you look at history, it's kind of uncanny that he came back. And think about how much longer he played for. After missing the 2008 season, he comes back in 2009, doesn't win another Super Bowl until they beat the Seahawks in 14, then the Falcons, then the Rams, then goes to Tampa Bay and wins again. I think for Patrick, it's a matter of how long can he stay healthy? How long can he play at the level he plays at now? Him and Josh Allen, they run a lot. They do things that Tom rarely left the pocket. These two guys run around. They take a lot of hits. Mahomes gets hit a lot, and he's not a big guy. I mean, he's not Peyton Manning. So I think a lot of it will have to do with his ability to remain healthy for another 10, 12, 15 years.
And his ability to stay hungry when he's got $500 million in the bank. Final question, it's an obvious one. Who wins on Sunday?
I mean, who knows? I don't like to make predictions, but I mean, personally, I'd like to see the Eagles do it for a number of reasons. So we'll see. I can't believe I'm rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I am this week.
One stat that doesn't make sense, Mahomes is 15-0 in domes. It's just unfathomable. The book is Dynasty. He also wrote 16 other bestsellers. He's an Emmy-winning producer as well. Jeff Benedict, great pleasure having you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.